Welcome to Let's Play Rule the Waves 2 as France, starting in 1920. This is episode 68, and we've just been through what I'm going to call a Navy extinction event. The Italian Navy has been crushed. I'm reasonably hopeful that the Italians, after, 5 months of war, are going to come to their senses and sue for peace. You'd think so. But at the risk of seeming gloating, let's just check out some of the results that we got. So I don't have to remind you that we sank 7 carriers and a battlecruiser. In fact, that only 3 ships have survived this amazing event, and that we lost a British battleship, a light cruiser, and a couple of destroyers, and 5 transports, and 111 planes. They lost 485 planes, as well as the fleet. It'll be interesting in a moment to see what they have left, but it's basically a light carrier and some heavy cruisers and odds and sods. The actual ship losses, really interesting to see how some of these ships took such an incredible pounding before they sank. I mean, obviously not, say, the British Camperdown, which had no heavy hits, 6 medium, 2 lights, and 2 torpedoes, and the 2 torpedoes did for it. In fairness, of course, the AI ran the Camperdown at high speed and stopped it from being able to get on top of the flooding. However, the Elba battlecruiser, 106 hits, 106 heavy hits. My God. Even carriers were taking 26, 32, 22, 36 heavy hits between them. So yeah, just extraordinary. If people want to study this some more, want to point out anything, I would be fascinated to hear your thoughts. The thoughts that I had was that, well, first of all, this is quite obviously not the AI's finest hour. But you know, these battles are hard enough for humans to manage. You know, I had a battle fleet, a scouting fleet, a carrier force, and a convoy force, not to mention various rogue ships, more of which later, all milling around a large segment of the Western Mediterranean. I presume the Italians weren't just in one force, that they were mixed up in several forces too. So it's just really hard. Secondly, they started very, very close to me. I mean, you know, so close, the heavy cruisers were right in the middle of my fleet. Now, this shouldn't really have happened. Usually in this era, carriers would steam away from the sighting reports during the nighttime in order to not fall victim to raiding fast battleships or heavy cruisers dashing across the night when the carriers' planes were ineffective. They were also especially unlucky that the weather closed in. We had dawn, I crushed the Italian heavy cruisers, then I was able to launch strikes. They didn't land any hits on me. I managed to sink one of their carriers. Then bad weather closed in and prohibited further air operations, although my decks were absolutely heaving with armed aeroplanes, which allowed my battleships to race forward and find and sink the carrier force as well as the Elba. Couldn't have come at a worse time for them. However, all of that poor AI luck and difficulty in coordinating a battle is kind of balanced out by the fact that my fighters ruled the air, with the exception of some quite fortunate air hits, more of which later, but effectively their air power was neutralized. That probably included not being able to properly reconnaissance and scout for my fleet. So they may not have really known where I was or had a very sketchy picture. I mean, heaven knows I had a sketchy picture of where they were. I also noted that in the 144 air-to-air losses, 100 of them were dive bombers, Italian dive bombers. So I had a quick look why they were so awful, and the short answer is they were really slow. 240 knots against my nearly 300 knots Davuertine. Then I had a little look at my fighters. So I had a mixed force, a 1946 Portez, They go around 380 knots. They can do just over 300 nautical miles, and they have this 12 firepower, 16 maneuver, 9 toughness. I was hoping to find out what the Italians were. This is a significantly better plane than the 1941 Marianne Soulinaire, who are considerably slower, a bit shorter range, a lot less firepower, almost as maneuverable and equally as tough. I mean, you can think of it as my Spitfire and my Hurricane. However, the 1943 Caproni, Italy's principal fighter, lumbers around the sky at 280 knots, slower than my dive bomber, let alone my actual fighters. Now, weirdly, despite having been at war with them for the last 5 months, I have no figures for them for range, or their firepower, or their maneuverability, or their toughness. I just have to imagine that it's considerably worse than the Marianne Soulinaire. And then finally, I just want to call out the performance of the Lafayette. So the Lafayette's light carrier wasn't with the carrier force, it was attached to the battle force. I had assumed that I'd equipped it completely with fighters, but I hadn't. That was a previous older light carrier, the first converted one, and I'd forgotten to reshuffle around the strike force on the Lafayette. Nonetheless, it had 20 fighters and a small squadron of dive bombers and a small squadron of torpedoes, and that 20 fighter squadron scored 24 kills, twice as much as any other carrier fighter group in the fleet. So for me, I think that really vindicated the idea of having a light carrier with your battle fleet that is purely devoted to just cap. Having a nice chat with Reevery, he reminded me that when you get torpedo hits, and I was complaining that I was getting these torpedo hits, I had no idea where they were, you can click on them and it will take you to where they are. It can be hard to know where that is if there's no land reference or no ships around, and you have to like zoom out to see where that might be, but at least it gives you a general indication of where that action is taking place. He also noted that I was having quite a lot of trouble with rogue ships, to put it mildly, and as he said, that's just part of the price of playing at Rear Admiral mode. I don't mind playing at Captain's mode in the very, very early pre-Dreadnought era, because if you don't, your force can almost disintegrate. So I will play Captain's mode during that time, sort of 1900, 1905, that kind of thing. But then when fleets get big, I prefer to go to Rear Admiral's mode. Otherwise, this 4-hour battle could have taken twice or even longer. He agreed with me not to send out my carrier strike forces and have them do a nighttime landing. They were all ready. I got a warning message and I decided not to. But he reminded me that I was doing the most difficult thing, multiple carriers doing a coordinated strike. And if I'd done single carriers, that would have shortened the time and they may have been able to get back in time before night. Or if I'd done an uncoordinated strike, ditto, that might have meant that I could get back in time. And of course, given the circumstances where all of their carriers were largely sunk, I could have done both. I could have done a single carrier and uncoordinated, and that might have allowed me to loose off those remaining carrier strikes and sink the remaining 3 ships. This is the details from the various bombing attacks. You can do this. Let me just pause this and I'll show you how to do this. So here is the Game 9 folder of saves, and here are these SKV files. So what you can do is you can take this file, Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste it, and then right-click and choose Rename and get rid of that and put a CSV file name, which I've already done. You can see it here. And that then allows you to load that into a spreadsheet, which I've copied here. So these are all the bombing attacks in the battle. The blue ones are French, the white ones are Italian. So few things to notice. First of all, here's the time, here's the number of aircraft, here's the type of aircraft. So obviously dive bombers in the main, but some medium bombers, some patrol bombers, flying boats, some even fighters. Gives you the plane type and the home base. So various carriers here, and here, and here, and here, and some air stations. Disruption, I believe, is the degree to which the anti-aircraft fire put you off in some way. If you know better, please let me know. And the bomb hit chance, pretty self-evident. The target ship, and then how many hits did you actually score? Here you can see versus the sterner, I achieved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. And then later, I achieved a hit on the Falco, 2 hits on the Falco. The Falco, an Italian light carrier, I believe the one that survived, actually did great work for the Italians. It was the only carrier on the Italian side to make any hits. None of their fleet carriers did anything. And they had a go at Retortable, although they missed. And they had a go at my ships here, scoring 1 either side. It's a little way to go into the save folder and have a little bit of a look and see what you can find. That's enough of that battle / extinction event. Let's hop across and see where we are, August 1947. A couple of things to notice. First of all, our monthly balance is going a little bit tight. If we have a little look under ships under construction, we've got our first series of guided missile destroyers, only 4 months away, and we have our Jean Bart 7 months away. So we're probably going to have to halt the Jean Bart, our first guided missile heavy cruiser, in order to get these guided missile destroyers in service as soon as possible, though I do suspect that the war will be over by then. We do have the new carrier, the Chateau de Chambord, but that's still working up, just trying to get its air groups in order, which have just been assigned, so it's not showing any planes, but they're just marshalling them at the moment. We've got our entire battle fleet in repair at the moment, so actually we have no active capital ships. If we have a little look at the almanac, we'll see that the Italians also have no battleships, but for a very different reason. They still do have 1 battle cruiser, and they still are building 2 battle cruisers. Heaven knows if and when they will appear. They have a remaining carrier, and they have 3 light carriers, but their main force is really their 17 heavy cruisers. If this is going to continue, it's going to continue mainly as a set of cruiser actions, I would have thought. They have no light cruisers and only 12 destroyers remaining, and some 31 escorts and 57 submarines. They, despite losing nearly 500 planes, they reportedly still have some 2,000, but we'll have a little look at that. And of course, we've got our 16 airships, which performed great service and didn't take any significant losses whatsoever. That's where we're up to. Let's just save that and have a go. Battleship engagement, invasion battle. Hooray. Well, since we will now be automatically blockading the Italians and will be able to invade anywhere which is within our range, I do expect to have a little bit of fun here. So let's accept that. Attack enemy ships in general. I'm going to go for suppress enemy airfields in this one. And we've got some British ships, hooray. And let's go to that. So let's have a quick look what we have around here. So down at the bottom, we have 4 fleet carriers, 2 in one division and then 2 single divisions. I would use Tortuga's editor to fix that, but I don't in this case think that really matters. And the rest of the fleet isn't too jumbled up, so I'll spare myself the effort. In the center here, you have the Lafayette providing localized cap, and you have the British contribution of a couple of battleships, the Lion and the Howe, which is very welcome. Nice 16-inch gun, 11-inch belt. Nice, enjoying that. And then in the van, we have a set of heavy cruisers, 10 inches, the Guidon, the Amiral Jaco, ditto, and the Amiral Shana. Yep, so a nice homogeneous group of ships. And then just behind here is a merchant ship, and I believe it says that that's a merchant ship too. So that is the invasion force. The time is an hour before dawn at night. The weather conditions all seem to be fine. I just double check again here and go into the Guidon. Yep, there's no speed restrictions, no air restrictions. The wind is coming from the east, so the carriers will advance towards and then move away whilst they launch their planes, which is kind of a good place to be. And if I zoom out a few times, you will locate ourselves. Here is the island of Minorca, and here you can see Sicily, and this is our invasion point. So all we have to do is get the transports here to go there and protect them. We've got a couple of our submarines. We've instructed our air forces to concentrate on the Italian air bases here and here. Yeah, all should be reasonably straightforward. So I'm just going to call a halt to this video so that we can get straight into the action on the next one and enjoy what's potentially some of the final acts of this war. At least I'd expect so. And, you know, we occupy Sardinia as well. That would be great. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and see you next time.